Hi everyone, welcome to my channel Bibbidi Bobbidi Books. My name is Ellie and this is going to be my mermaid themed reading vlog. So I thought today would be the perfect day to start this vlog because it's so sunny and because we're at the seaside, so what better setting to start this reading vlog. I'm so excited that summer is finally here and I'm excited to start this reading vlog. So in terms of my TBR for this vlog, I have 4 books that I'm hoping to read. The first one is The Little Mermaid, because of course it is. This is such a classic fairy tale and it's one that I haven't actually read yet and I'm very excited to finally read it. And I've heard that the original tale is actually quite dark, a lot darker than say like the Disney adaptation that we're all familiar with, so I'm really excited to see how that all plays out. I've also got a couple of non-fiction books. I have Mermaids, The Myths, Legends and Lore by Sky Alexander. This is just a cute little non-fiction that has some illustrations in it as well that will hopefully give me a bit of information about the history behind the folklore of mermaids. I also have Women's Lore, 4,000 Years of Sirens, Serpents and Succubi, written by Sarah Clegg. This is another non-fiction, but it's more of a feminist take, so it's looking at how women have been sort of demonised in folklore over the years. And then finally, I have a little horror book called Lure, written by Tim McGregor. I thought this would be a nice addition because I really enjoy horror and it's nice and short, so it should be okay to read in this video. And I was originally going to read From Below by Darcy Coates, but someone in the comments of my video said that that doesn't actually include any mermaids, so I don't know where I got that idea from. So of course I had to switch it out for one that is actually involving mermaids. So yeah, that's my TBR. Those are the books that I'm planning to read over the next however long. So I really hope that you enjoy this video, and yeah, I guess I'll speak to you later when I've got an update. Hi everyone, so it is the next day and I wanted to give you a reading update. So I have now started Women's Lore, 400 Years of Sirens, Serpents and Succubi by Sarah Clegg, and I'm over halfway through this one already. I am sailing through this book and really enjoying it, and I was really pleased to find out that the audio for this was actually free on Audible. It didn't cost me a credit or anything, so I've been really enjoying listening to the audio narration for this story whilst annotating and highlighting as I go, and I found that to be the best way to consume this non-fiction because there are quite a lot of names and things in here that I didn't know how to pronounce, so I did struggle initially when I was just reading this physically, but it's been so nice listening to the audiobook as well. And this is just fascinating. So this is essentially a history of sirens, serpents and succubi, so it's tracing their origins and sort of trying to think about why they might have stayed so prevalent throughout the centuries, because these creatures, you know, have been hugely popular throughout the years in their ever-changing forms. And we find out that the origin for these creatures comes from an ancient Mesopotamian goddess called Lamashtu, and she was actually the daughter of the sky god Anu, but she was cast out because she expressed an interest in terrorizing pregnant women and causing harm to their babies. And that is a theme that is heavily prevalent with a lot of these she-demons. A lot of them have this desire to cause harm to pregnant women and to, you know, cause harm to babies and things like that. So huge trigger warnings for things like miscarriage, infant mortality, difficult pregnancies with this story. I just want to say that straight away because I know that is obviously an incredibly sensitive topic and something that a lot of people are struggling with, and it can be incredibly upsetting, so please be warned before you go into this one. But yeah, I found it so fascinating finding out about these creatures, and yeah, we talk about this goddess called Lamashtu, but also Lilith, who was apparently the first wife of Adam. You know, thinking of the story of creation, Adam and Eve you tend to think of, but apparently there was also Lilith, and Lilith was cast out of the Garden of Eden because she wanted to be equal to Adam, and so she was sent away, and she also has this desire to terrorize pregnant women, and it often stems from jealousy because, you know, Lilith but also Lamashtu, I don't think they can have children, and they're kind of the opposite of what society has deemed to be a good woman. You know, they can't be mothers themselves, and they're, you know, disobedient, they don't follow the will of man or the will of God, and so they are considered demons and they're cast out. But what I think is so interesting is that one theory for why these creatures have stayed so popular throughout the years is because it was one of the only ways that pregnant women could protect themselves against the very real fears of childbirth and infant mortality. You know, we're talking a time when modern medicine wasn't a thing, and women didn't really have any way to cope with the difficulties of childbirth and things like that, or a way to really come to terms with or understand things like infant mortality, you know, during a time when child death was incredibly common, very, very sadly. And so these creatures actually provided them with a way to try and protect themselves. So they would perform these spells and these rituals to try and cast out these demons, and I think that is why it has stayed so popular throughout the centuries, because women would pass on these tales to each other, and childbirth is something that was very much kept within women. Men historically didn't get involved in anything to do with childbirth or pregnancy. That was kind of left up to the women, and so this was their way of trying to cope with some of these things, and they would perpetuate these myths and these legends by telling each other of them, telling them how to get rid of these demons and things like that. And that's why they think it stayed so popular, despite the fact that we then had organised religions coming in, and, you know, these practices that the women would perform, these spells and things, didn't really fit with things like organised religion and the kinds of things that they would talk about. But women still continued to practice these ways because they didn't really have any other choice. There wasn't really any other medical care for them during childbirth and things. So I think that's so fascinating. And then it talks about how these creatures have kind of changed over the years, so how these she-demons have been manipulated, how they've been changed by men mostly, and how they started to embody men's fears of women, and how they were kind of used as a way to teach women what you shouldn't be. So these creatures were often the opposite of what was considered to be the perfect woman. So these creatures often couldn't have children themselves. They were often, you know, temptresses, and, you know, they were seductresses. They would wear their hair loose, which was a sign of being, you know, very sexy. You know, if you were a proper woman, you're supposed to have your hair up and bound. And they would also not obey men. They would go off and do their own thing. So it's the complete opposite of the sort of chaste woman that you're supposed to be according to society back in those days. And so it's really interesting to see how that kind of influenced these creatures and how they took on this seductress kind of form. And yeah, it's so interesting. So I've been thoroughly enjoying this one. I would highly recommend for you to pick this one up if you think any of that sounds interesting. Okay, so I am now going to go and get some food and to chill out for a little bit, and yeah, we'll see what I pick up next, but I'll keep you posted. And I think we're going to go back to the seaside at some point. I really want to go and catch the sunset, so fingers crossed we can get a good sunset soon. And yeah, I guess I'll speak to you a little bit later when I've got another update. Hi everyone, just popping in to give you a bit of a reading update. So I have now finished Women's Law by Sarah Clegg, and I really enjoyed this one. I thought this was a fantastic starting point. It's a way to kind of give you a little bit of a background about the history of these creatures, but it also provides you with a bibliography at the back, so you have the chance to go and look up more about these creatures, because honestly they are so fascinating and complex, and I'm definitely going to be researching more about them because I'm hooked now. And yeah, I just loved how this book talked a little bit about how these creatures have become reclaimed as feminist icons, as feminist heroes, how, you know, in the 20th century, mermaids and the Lilith have become really important to the LGBTQIA+ community as well. And I just loved the conversations around that and the way that this book kind of ended as well. And I just wanted to read you a quote because I thought that it was really lovely. So it says, "Mermaid tales are no longer the grim, slimy things of Thackeray, writhing just under the water level, but incredible iridescent silicone fins worn by mermaid swimmers. This in itself is a reclamation. A trope that was used to attack women for being overly sexual turned into a glorious celebration of glitter, rainbows, and femininity." I just love that idea that, you know, these creatures were used to demonize women over the years, but how now they have been reclaimed and now they're such a celebration of femininity. And the book ended on a fantastic line as well. It says, "Against seemingly insurmountable obstacles, the story of our demons is the story of the triumph of women's law." And I just think that is the perfect ending to this story. I loved it. I also wanted to let you know that I have started and finished Law by Tim McGregor. So this is a horror novella and I absolutely ate this one up. I read it in one sitting. It was so fast paced, it kept me hooked, and I really enjoyed this one. So this is a story about a seaside town that's cut off from the rest of the world because it's backed by this mountain range and then it's right up against the sea. So it's a super isolated setting and the town is drenched in the sea. You know, everything revolves around fishing. That's their way of getting food. That's everybody's main occupation really. And so it's super atmospheric. And we follow a teenager called Casper and his experiences when a mermaid comes to town, or a mermaid type creature. And that's all I really want to say because I don't want to give spoilers, but basically this has a lot of themes of the mistreatment of women, because this is a very archaic community that we're talking about. I don't think it gives a specific time frame for this story, but it's definitely very old-fashioned in that women are expected to be married off to their husbands. That is their sole purpose in life. They're expected to obey men and to just get on with being a housewife and to serve their husbands basically. And so there's quite a lot of discussions around that. But yeah, if you want something that is very atmospheric and something that's also going to keep you hooked, I would highly recommend this one. I think the pacing was fantastic. It had some really great action sequences in there as well and some really horrifying scenes. And I'm just going to read you from the back because I think it sums up really nicely. So it says, "In the chapel of a forsaken fishing village on another world's shore, the sea-washed bones of old gods hang from the rafters. When a new god drifts into the bay, the menfolk fear nothing as they reach for their spears, but capturing her may be their last act of reckless bravado. Her very presence brings dissent and madness. Her voice threatens to tear the starving, angry community apart. Setting a siege of relentless horror against the backdrop of brine and blood, Lure blurs the line between natural disaster and self-destruction." This was so fun, highly recommend. Anyway, I'm gonna head off now, but I will give you an update when I've next got one. I've just got 2 books to go. We've got The Little Mermaid and we've also got the other non-fiction book. So I'm looking forward to giving those a read and I'll keep you posted. Okay, bye for now. everyone. So I have just been sat outside having some breakfast and enjoying the sunshine, and I've been doing some reading, and I have now read The Little Mermaid story by Hans Christian Andersen. This was actually a lot shorter than I expected it to be. This book is actually a collection of short stories including The Little Mermaid, so that was the first story in this book, and it's very, very short, so I read it quickly with my cup of coffee this morning and my breakfast, and I had a real fun time reading this one. It's very different from the Disney adaptation, which I feel like is the one that we're most familiar with, and it's a lot darker, a lot less appropriate for children, I would say. But it's been fun reading this one. So in this story we follow the Little Mermaid. She doesn't have a name. She's not called Ariel like in the Disney movie. She just goes by the Little Mermaid. She's the youngest princess. She's got other sisters as well. She lives under the sea, obviously, and she's always been obsessed with the land above the sea. Then one day she decides to go to the Sea Witch to transform herself so that she can go up onto land. She wants to have legs. She wants to go and hang out with this prince that she's seen, that she's kind of taken a fancy to. But it's a little bit different than the Disney movie, because the main reason why she wants to go and do that is because she wants an immortal soul, because in this story, mermaids don't have souls. They just live until they're 300 years old and then they turn into sea foam, and that's the end of their life. Whereas humans have immortal souls, and so when they die they can pass on to the next world and live amongst the stars, and that is something that Ariel really, really wants for herself. And the only way you can get an immortal soul as a mermaid is to make a human fall in love with you so much that they actually share their soul with you, and their soul becomes kind of imbued with your body, and that is the only way that you can have access to eternal life. And so the Little Mermaid obviously wants that for herself. She makes a deal with the Sea Witch and she gets her fishtail turned into legs, and it's described in a really gruesome way actually, so I'll give you a read of it from here to give you an idea of how dark this one is. So it says, "I will make you a potion, and before sunrise you must swim ashore with it, seat yourself on the beach and drink it. Then your tail will divide and shrivel up to what men call beautiful legs, but it hurts. It is as if a sharp sword were running through you. All who see you will say that you are the most beautiful child of a man they have ever seen. You will keep your gliding gait, no dancer will rival you, but every step you take will be as if you were treading upon sharp knives, so sharp as to draw blood. If you are willing to suffer all this, then I am ready to help you." So that's so dark. Literally the whole time she is up on land, walking on her new legs, spending time with this prince. It is as if she is in so much pain. It's as if she is walking on sharp knives, and that's just such a horrible thing to imagine. And the Little Mermaid also has to have her tongue cut out as part of this deal with the Sea Witch as well. So she's obviously mute, which is something that you see in the Disney movie as well. And it's such a sad story. I won't give too much away, but it doesn't necessarily have the happy ending that you might expect. It is pretty sad and pretty devastating. Another difference is that the Little Mermaid's sisters do actually try to save her, so they make a deal with the Sea Witch themselves. They have all their hair cut off in exchange for this magic dagger that they think will help save the Little Mermaid. And so yeah, there's quite a few differences, and I was pretty surprised by the ending. Yeah, the other thing I will say is in the Disney movie, the Sea Witch, Ursula, she doesn't have a name in this book, but in the Disney movie she's called Ursula. She is kind of the one that ruins things, or tries to ruin things, for Ariel and the prince, whereas that's a little bit different in this one as well. The prince actually has an attraction to a different woman who has nothing to do with the Sea Witch, and that kind of gets in the way of his relationship forming with him and the Little Mermaid. So yeah, there's quite a few differences, and it's been really interesting actually going ahead and reading the original story and kind of seeing the changes that were made and things to it. So yeah, I had a fun time reading this one. This is such a beautiful edition as well. I got this gorgeous hardback. It is so pretty. It's got illustrations throughout, and it also has some 3D elements to it as well, and like interactive elements, which is so fun. It's going to be such a lovely keepsake. So yeah, I had a lot of fun reading that this morning with my coffee. Now I'm just having a cuddle here with Hades, and then I'm going to do some housework, sort things out, and read that other book, and I'll give you an update once I finish that one. Hey everyone! So it's quite a bit later and I wanted to give you an update because I have now read this little book and I had a fun time with this one. I would say it's very much a entry point. It's very surface level. It kind of gives you a brief overview of mermaids and, you know, these mermaid-like creatures across different cultures and things, but it is very brief. It doesn't give you much depth, which is something that I was missing just because I'm particularly interested in these creatures now and I wanted just a little bit more. But if you are looking for something that is a nice introduction, that's easy to read, just something that's enjoyable to flick through, it's got nice illustrations and something that you can just kind of sit and enjoy with a cup of tea, then I would recommend this book. But yeah, it was quite brief, but I did enjoy it. And yeah, it was very different to Women's Law. Women's Law was very much a feminist take and it traced these creatures back to the Mesopotamian era and the goddess Lamashtu, who is nothing like what you would think of as a mermaid, because Lamashtu was essentially this mashup of different creatures. She was described as having the head of a lion and the teeth of a donkey and these talons, like bird-like talons, which of course is nothing like what you would picture as a mermaid. Whereas this book talks about the origins of kind of the first true mermaid or classic mermaid that you would think of. So they say that the first sort of half fish, half woman creature was this goddess in mythology who supposedly fell in love with a shepherd, a human shepherd, and there's different versions of the story, but one version says she accidentally kills this man that she's in love with, and then because she's so upset about that, she throws herself into the lake, but she isn't granted her wish, which is to drown and join her beloved, because she's so beautiful and the gods don't want her to pass on, I guess. So they keep her alive as this half woman, half fish creature. So it's a very sad tale. And they think that's the first sort of time that we see that type of creature. And yeah, it talks a little bit about supposed mermaid sightings and things. It talks about Christopher Columbus on his voyage around the world and how he famously spotted some mermaids, but they actually think that that was probably manatees, which I think is really funny. It actually says in here, hang on, let me find it. It says, during his voyage back from the New World in 1493, Christopher Columbus wrote of spotting 3 mermaids playing in the waves in the Caribbean. Quite likely he actually saw manatees, for he reported that the mermaids were not half as beautiful as they are painted, and their faces looked more like men's than women's. So I just think that's really funny that we have all of these glamorous sort of ideas of what a mermaid looks like, and then Christopher Columbus sees these manatees and thinks that they're mermaids. I just find that a really funny idea. But yeah, and then it talks about sirens that kind of pop up in the Odyssey, the sort of Greek mythology, and then it goes on to talk about various different mermaid-like creatures from different cultures as well. So it talks about you know, them in sort of the ancient world, but also it talks about them in places like Africa, and yeah, it's just a really nice little sort of like introduction to mermaids. So if you're interested, then, you know, I would recommend this one. So I had fun with that. Anyway, I am going to end this video here. I really hope that you enjoyed it. I had so much fun filming it. Thank you for hanging out with me, and do let me know if you enjoy these types of videos, because I am happy to make more themed vlogs if it's something that you enjoy watching. So please do give me some feedback in the comment section down below, because that would be really helpful. But yeah, I hope that you are all doing fantastic. I hope you're having a lovely day, whatever it is that you're doing. Don't forget to like this video if you did like it, subscribe if you want to see some more from me, and I guess I'll see you next time with another video. Bye!